And so let's get started with the list cleanup and management, the B003, and we'll go over to the Miro board and start there. All right, here we are at the Miro board. And before we get started on the actual flow, I want to just kind of help orient us. And so we're going to go ahead and zoom in on the chart here a little bit, and we're just going to look at the legend at the top so I can just briefly explain to you how you can read this. So white items are going to be items that are happening within this flow that are system level. So those are going to be your automations and things like that, not anything that you necessarily need to pay specific attention to. Green items are going to be actions by account, admins, owners, system administrators. So if you are an agency, these will be you. The purple will be, your customers, but essentially the purple are going to be customers of the account itself. Then we have variable links between the elements on the chart and fixed links. So you can see some fixed links here and then some variable links here. And the difference between these is if it's a variable link, it's an action that could occur, but it might not occur because it's dependent upon some kind of human intervention. And fixed links are things that are going to occur no matter what between those actions. Then we have a few different types of shapes here. We have this shape when we're storing data. So this would be like tagging, for example, and then displaying something. So this might be like a trigger link or a funnel step or website page. Then we have automated processes. This would be workflows and things like that. And then decision trees when something can go one way or the other. And then we have manual actions. And so you'll want to pay specific attention to the manual actions icons. And those will always be colored either purple or green, depending on who the action is on, whether it be the customer or the account administrator. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into the flow itself. We're going to start with this workflow here, which is the B003WF1.1 inactive opportunity. And so let's go to the system and we'll just open this workflow. So here we are in automation on the left-hand side, and we're looking at our module folders here for workflows. And so we're going to go into the B003 list cleanup, and then we're looking at this 1.1 workflow right here. And we'll notice when we open this that there's a number of different triggers up here at the top. And these are all stale opportunity triggers. Now, if you don't know what a stale opportunity is, that is when an opportunity sits on a pipeline and a certain stage, for example, for a certain amount of days, and then they become stale. And so if we look at one of these stale opportunities, we can see that right here it's duration and days 910. Now, something to mention here is without any additional filters in place, this would just mean if somebody is on any pipeline in your system for 910 days, this trigger would fire off. You can add additional levels of filtering here to select, for example, like a specific pipeline. And then I don't have any pipelines in this account, but if we selected a pipeline, we could even then define one level further into a pipeline stage. But by default, what we give you is just the most broad, which is just going to look at stale within any pipeline in the system for this amount of time. So that's the way the workflow begins. Let's go back to the Miro board here, and we can see that what we're essentially checking here is, are they stale for 3 to 6 months, 12 to 18 months, 24 to 36 months, or 48 to 60 months. Now, based on how stale they are, there will be different tags added to the contact according to their level of staleness. And so we can see all of those tags in the workflow being added here. And so somebody, might become stale at 3 months, get this tag, then they get stale at 6 months and they get this tag. And so they might eventually get, a number of these different tags at once. And we can talk about that here in a few moments when we get back to the tag router, because you can either decide to keep those tags or you can decide to do a tag cleanup process and remove the old tags, for example. So that is how this workflow works. And let's go back to our Miro board here, and we're going to look at our next tree here within the flowchart. Okay, so if we zoom out a little bit, we can see we have a few more things going on down here a little lower. So let's just zoom back in. And then the next thing that's happening is this B003, the 2.1 workflow, which is check, update info. And so let's go to the system, and we're going to back out of this workflow that we were in. Let's go into the 2.1 workflow. And so we can see after a contact gets created, so this trigger is just any contact created in the system. We're going to wait 7 days. And then we're going to drop a little tag right here, gathering missing contact details. And then what we're going to do is we're going to check, let's open this if condition. So these branches, we're basically checking to see, is phone empty? Is email empty? And then here we have full contact information. And then here, for some reason, we're missing first and last name. So based on what's happening there, they're going to go down this tree and receive some messaging to update their contact information. And so after this tag has been added, if for some reason email is missing, then we're going to add, or we're going to display rather, a trigger link for them to update their email. And if phone is missing, we'll display a trigger link for them to update their phone. Now let's go look at the trigger links, and we'll talk about the trigger links for a moment. So to get to trigger links in the system, what you need to do is click on marketing on the left-hand side. So we're going to go ahead and click on marketing, and then you can hover over trigger links and click on links. And so what is a trigger link, you might be asking? A trigger link is a special link in the system. And the trigger link, let's look at what it looks like in one of the workflows here. And so we'll go into this one. This one is if we're trying to solicit for a phone number. So if we look at this email here, we could see this is what a trigger link looks like. And so it's going to be a clickable link, something that they can click on, and there's just kind of a random string of letters and numbers here. And what that is doing is building a special link. And here in the trigger links is where we can define what the link structure is. And so if you don't understand this part, it's okay. It's not important for you to understand it, but for those that are kind of into this thing, I will briefly explain it. And so what we have here in this first set of brackets here is a custom value, and this is where we put the domain of a funnel. And this is where the funnel that contains the form that they use to update their contact information. So once you link a domain to your account, then you could put the domain of the funnel that is going to house that form into the custom value. And so then that custom value will get injected here into the trigger link. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pass in first and last name. And then we're also going to pass in contact phone if they're updating email, and we're going to pass in email if they're updating phone. And so what that means, practically speaking, for you is that when this trigger link is clicked, any information that we already have on that contact will be automatically placed into the form. And so let's just look at the form real quick. And so to get to the form and the funnel where it exists, we're going to click on Sites on the left. And I'll just go ahead and open this in a new tab. And so then we're going in the funnels, we're going to do list cleanup. And then we're going to look at the B003 update contact information. And while that's pulling up, I'll just show you quickly that here on the Miro, you can see that both of the trigger links lead to this funnel step. And so the names of the trigger links are here, and the name of the funnel step is here. That way you can always find what you need in the system and understand how it's working. And then inside of that funnel step is this form, and you can see the name of the form right here as well. And so if we go to this funnel, and we'll just preview this funnel step here, we can see that here is our form to update contact information. And so if we already have phone number for them, we're going to pre-populate the phone. If we already have email, we're going to pre-populate the email, and then they'll see that something is blank. And since everything is a required field, if they try to proceed without filling out all of the information, the system will not allow for them to do that. And so this is the contact form that is used. And so then the reason we have a dotted line here is because they can obviously get to the form and decide to not submit, or they can receive messages to go to this funnel step, receive trigger links, and decide to not actually open that. And so it is optional, and so that's why we have dotted lines. However, once the form is submitted, that's going to kick us into the 2.3 form submit workflow. And so let's go back to our system here, and we're going to just back out of this workflow, and then we can go to our 2.3 form submit workflow. Then we can see wrong contact information form submitted is what causes this workflow to begin. That is our trigger at the top. And then we're going to add the form submit update bad contact info tag right here. And we're going to just send them a message saying, hey, thanks for, updating your contact information. And so that is the gist of it there. And just to point out, all of our tags are going into the routing workflow. And so we will talk about that at the very end. And so moving back over here, so the next workflow that we have is the 3.1, which is email bounced. So let's go ahead and look at that in the system here. And so this runs automatically anytime an email bounces. If you try to send an email out to any contact in the system and it bounces back, then this workflow will begin. And the whole purpose of this workflow is to send them a text message and let them know, hey, it looks like we have an email for you that's not working. And so we're going to erase that email from the contact field and add a tag, and then we're going to enable DND, which is do not disturb for email, so that way the system isn't trying to email them until we get an updated email address from them. So that is just a pretty simple little workflow right there, but extremely useful. And then our last one here inside the B003 module, and just to make sure that I got everything here. Yep, so this is our last one. So at any point in time in the system, an admin or manager of the account can add a B003 spam tag to a contact. And so let's say that you have somebody messaging you in the account, and it's clear that they are not a real person, or they're a spammer or something. You can just manually push them out by adding the spam tag, and that will trigger off this 4.1 workflow. And so if we go back here to our 4.1, here is our spam, and all that is going to do is just automatically add or enable DND for that contact, and then subsequently on the router. And so what the router is doing is simply aggregating all the tags that are used throughout B003, this entire module. And anytime any of those tags are used, this workflow will begin. So we can see all of our inactive contact tags here. And then we can see other tags used in this module down here. And we just talked about the spam tag. So we can see here that we're removing all workflows when the spam tag is added. And so all of the removing of workflows or tag cleanup, meaning the deletion of tags or removal of tags, or pipeline stage mapping, is done within this tag routing workflow for each module. What that allows you to do is have a very easy way to integrate this system with any other systems that you're using or other products that you've purchased as well. So it's a good way to tie snapshots together. And so all you need to know is that when these tags are added, you get to decide what else you want to do with those contacts once these tags have been added, and that can all be done within the tag router. So that is it for the B003